After the First World War, the German military was reduced to ashes. The man who helped rebuild it from the shadows was Erich von Manstein, a Prussian aristocrat whose mind operated far away from the trenches, deep inside the strategic planning rooms. The Treaty of Versailles imposed strict legal limits on the defeated nation. Before the Great War, the German army had over 40,000 officers. By 1919, that number was forcibly slashed to just 4,000. With a severely restricted roster, only the sharpest intellects were retained. Manstein was absorbed into the Truppenamt, a covert organization acting as the illegal German general staff. Operating in this hidden military kitchen, he spent the interwar years quietly drawing up mobilization plans and writing modern tactical doctrine. His strategic thinking extended directly to hardware. He conceptualized the Sturmgeschütz, or Stug. By mounting a 75mm howitzer directly onto a tank chassis, he created a mobile assault gun specifically designed to shatter enemy bunkers and directly support infantry advances. Through secret logistical planning and the integration of specialized mobile artillery, Manstein helped take an army crippled by international law and prime it for a highly mechanized, high-speed conflict. When the time came to invade France in 1939, the German High Command drafted a plan. It was essentially a recycled, predictable World War I offensive. Manstein found it entirely useless. This map illustrates Manstein's alternative. Rather than hitting the fortified Allied front head-on, he proposed pushing concentrated armored units to slice through the Ardennes forest, considered impassable for tanks. This maneuver would physically divide French and British forces into two separate pockets. His traditionalist superiors hated the idea. General Halder repeatedly blocked the proposal and even transferred Manstein to get him out of the way. Undeterred, Manstein used his high-ranking connections to bypass the entire chain of command and pitch his maneuver directly to Adolf Hitler. The dictator approved it. The plan worked perfectly. The German armored thrust isolated the Allies, forcing the rapid collapse of France and sending the British fleeing across the English Channel in a matter of weeks. Manstein engineered Germany's greatest military triumph. But by delivering such a swift, total victory, he inadvertently convinced Hitler that his own intuition was flawless. Gravely, by 1941, the theater shifted to the brutal reality of the Eastern Front. Given field command, Manstein was tasked with capturing the Crimean Peninsula. To break Sevastopol, he directed one of the heaviest artillery bombardments in history, reducing the city to rubble at a massive cost in human life. Watching his forces bleed for every yard of ground, Manstein realized that the fast, armored blitzkrieg tactics that won France were failing here. Panzers operating alone could not break a deeply entrenched, well-supplied Soviet war machine, locked into a grind of attrition. In late 1942, a massive Soviet trap snapped shut on the German Sixth Army at Stalingrad, facing them with total collapse in the south. Hitler summoned Manstein to take command of Army Group Dawn to salvage the front. The constraints were impossible. The troops lacked winter gear, the temperatures were lethal, and Hitler actively undermined Manstein by issuing conflicting orders directly to subordinate units, bypassing him entirely. Manstein launched Operation Winter Storm to break through to the trapped men, but the exhausted panzers stalled against fierce Soviet resistance. The Sixth Army's only chance was to break out from the inside, but Hitler issued a strict no-retreat order. Afraid to openly challenge the Führer's authority, Manstein refused to officially order the breakout. General Paulus, commanding the Sixth Army, was equally terrified of Hitler and refused to move without direct permission. That shared obedience sealed the fate of hundreds of thousands of men, resulting in the total annihilation of the Sixth Army. Following the disaster at Stalingrad, the Southern Front fractured. Emboldened Soviet armies poured westward across Ukraine, aiming to cut off the remaining German forces. Instead of defending a broken line, Manstein executed a backhand blow. Retreating his armor, he drew the Soviet armies into an exposed salient. Once overextended, Manstein sprang the trap. 3 Panzer Corps smashed the vulnerable Soviet flanks, recapturing Kharkov and stabilizing the sector. This brilliant counterstroke proved the German army still had teeth. Manstein wanted to immediately strike the Kursk salient while the Russians were off balance, but Hitler, eager for a flawless revenge, delayed Operation Citadel to the summer. He spent months massing forces in plain sight, giving the Soviets ample time to construct the densest defensive network on Earth. Manstein's tactical flexibility had briefly resurrected the German army. By ignoring him and forcing a massive, predictable frontal assault at Kursk, Hitler permanently shattered his military's offensive capability. After Kursk, the initiative belonged entirely to the Soviet Union. Massive rolling offensives steadily pushed the bleeding, outnumbered German units back toward the Dnieper River. As the lines crumbled, Hitler issued another catastrophic standing order. He forbade any tactical withdrawals. Every unit was to hold their position to the very last man, regardless of the tactical reality. By early 1944, 60,000 German soldiers were surrounded in the Korsun pocket. Haunted by the ghosts of the Sixth Army at Stalingrad, Manstein finally reached his breaking point. He ignored the dictator in Berlin and explicitly ordered his trapped troops to break out. He managed to pull 40,000 men out of the encirclement. A month later, he defied Hitler again to save the trapped 1st Panzer Army. Infuriated by this repeated disobedience, Hitler summoned Manstein on March 30, 1944, and permanently dismissed him from command. Facing the inevitable end of the war, Manstein finally chose the survival of his men over his own career and his obedience to the Führer. When the fighting stopped, Manstein was captured by the Allies. In 1949, he sat in a courtroom to answer for the methods of his military logic. He was convicted of war crimes and sentenced to 18 years in prison. He was released after serving just 4 years. During the Cold War, the new West German government quietly hired him as a civilian advisor to help structure the Bundeswehr, though public backlash eventually forced him out of the role. He died in 1973. Erich von Manstein possessed a generational ability to read a map and move an army, but his career stands as a stark historical warning. When brilliant strategy is subordinated to a regime of uncompromising evil, intellect offers no salvation. It only engineers a larger tragedy.